Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Before we begin, can I remind all members that social distancing measures are in place in the chamber and across the campus, and ask members please to take care to observe these measures during the course of this afternoon's business, including when entering and exiting the chambers. Members will also have been reminded by the presiding officer of the need for pace and brevity in both questions and answers to allow all questioners, if possible, to be taken. And in that spirit, we go first to portfolio questions on Constitution, Europe and External Affairs. Question number 1, Anas Sarwar.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it last met the UK Government to discuss constitutional matters.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
Presiding Officer, I should make clear that the profound damage the UK Internal Market Bill will have on the powers of the Scottish Parliament is something I raise with the UK Government often. I did so at the meeting of the JMC European negotiations on the 3rd of September, and I will do so again at the next meeting of the committee, which is scheduled for tomorrow. On the 10th of September, the Minister for Europe and International Development participated in a quadrilateral meeting with the UK Government and ministers from the other devolved administrations to discuss progress on the ongoing review of intergovernmental relations. The Minister also had a call on the 10th of September with the UK Government ministers to discuss fisheries protection and maritime security. Another call on the 1st of October with UK Government ministers to discuss borders.
Anas Sarwar.
I know how passionate the Cabinet Secretary is about accuracy, and I also know, like me, he cares about putting the pandemic before politics. But even he must have been surprised when he heard the First Minister state on the 16th of October that she had paused the independence campaign through this pandemic. If you look at any ministers, indeed the First Minister's Twitter account, it's flooded with references to independence or indeed F2. Indeed, in this very Parliament on the 1st of September, the Government said that the independence referendum bill would be heart of its programme for government and would be expected in the coming months. So can the Cabinet Secretary confirm on what date the independence referendum was paused and what date it was unpaused?
Cabinet Secretary.
There is a letter from me to Michael Gove which indicates that we have paused it, and that letter is, I think, dated in March, possibly the 16th, but I will check that and come back to him. In terms of unpausing the independence referendum will only be unpaused in the sense of working on it when we are preparing for the bill, which is to be published before next year's election. But I am surprised at the line of questioning. I would have thought that, considering constitutional matters, a member might want to raise, for example, Brexit and the Internal Market Bill, to look at the damage that is being done by Brexit and the fact the UK Government has not only not paused Brexit, but is intensifying the search for an incredibly damaging Brexit. That would seem to me the issue that should be addressed, and I'm surprised that the member is refusing to do so. Perhaps that closeness between the former Better Together friends is now being seen again.
Supplementary question, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree it's time for the UK Government and indeed the opposition parties in this chamber to acknowledge the huge strength of feeling across Scotland in favour of another independence referendum, given the momentous changes such as Brexit in recent years, and that if they have faith in the Union and confidence that they can win the arguments rather than obstruct, they should work to facilitate the right of people in Scotland to decide their own future and back another independence referendum?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think the member has a very valid point. It is extraordinary. It is extraordinary that we have the spectacle of a Labour Party that has championed the right of self-determination across the globe. But when it looks at Scotland and it looks at the opinion polls that say the people of Scotland want to exercise their right of self-determination, its own selfish interests come first. But of course, the people of Scotland know that. They have already judged the Labour Party. We see that from the rickle of members that are on their benches now, which will be even fewer, I have to say, next year.
Question number 2, Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what proposed changes have come from its review into international development programmes in light of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Minister Jenny Gilruth.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In the programme for government published on the 1st of September this year, the First Minister set out the government's intention to review our approach to international development. The impetus for a refresh of the strategy is to ensure that we are focusing our work on areas where we can make the biggest difference in our partner countries against the new backdrop of COVID-19. That work is still ongoing, so in answer to Mr Briggs' question, no proposed changes have as yet come forward from the review.
Miles Briggs.
Can I thank the Minister for that answer? And one of the changes which were being proposed were around health spend and health support for developing countries. Can I ask the Minister what discussions have taken place in light of this pandemic in terms of future support for developing countries to access the vaccine once it is globally available? And given the negative impact we've seen on our own NHS due to the pandemic, what learning has also been learned by ministers here in Edinburgh at the impact in developing countries on their health systems?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I thank Miles Briggs for that supplementary question. I've held a number of discussions with our partner country governments and representatives from their civil society groups in each of those countries on their thematic priorities. He's absolutely right to say that healthcare is a priority for a number of our partner countries. I don't think, however, it's for the Scottish Government to direct in terms of what those future themes would look like, and I hope he'll understand that the review is still ongoing with that in that respect. But in terms of how we are supporting our partner countries, he'll be aware that we ring-fenced £2 million from the International Development Fund as part of this year's financial contribution to COVID-19 efforts in our partner countries. Now, on the point about vaccines, access to vaccines has not yet been raised with me directly. Obviously, we don't yet have a vaccine. I'm not ruling that out in the future. However, I'd just like him to, I suppose, understand that these conversations are ongoing. Healthcare remains a priority for us in Scotland. He's absolutely right as well to say that our partner countries could benefit potentially from expertise in Scotland. Part of that work's already been done through the NHS in Scotland. There's a partnership between the NHS in Scotland and Malawi, for example.
Thank you very much. Question number 3, Michelle Ballantyne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what estimate it has made of the number of jobs in Scotland that rely on frictionless trade across the UK and how this could be impacted by constitutional change.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, both Scotland and the UK have benefited enormously in terms of jobs by being part of the EU's single market, with all the economic benefits that flow from being inside the world's largest trading bloc based on frictionless trade. In terms of population, the single market is 7 times the size of the UK alone and offers huge opportunities for an independent Scotland. The UK government's decision to impose trade barriers through its extreme Brexit policy will hit manufacturing particularly hard. Scotland's manufacturing exports to the EU and countries the EU has a trade deal with is worth more than Scotland's manufacturing exports to the rest of the UK. The question people in Scotland will be asking is this: who should be trusted to rebuild our economy after the global pandemic? Boris Johnson's ultra-Brexiteer Tory government or a Scottish government equipped with the full powers of independence?
Michelle Ballantyne.
Well, sadly, the Cabinet Secretary didn't actually answer my question. There is no doubt that COVID has had a devastating impact on jobs, and you've taken every opportunity to make clear your lack of respect for the democratic decision of the UK to end the UK's membership of the EU. But the fact remains that over 60% of Scotland's trade is with the rest of the UK, with the Fraser Allender Institute estimating that over 500,000 jobs rely on that trade. So as the UK completes our withdrawal from the European Union, can the Cabinet Secretary guarantee that the Scottish Government will put jobs first and not compromise Scotland's frictionless trade with the rest of the UK?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member is labouring under a fallacy which we hear from her colleagues all the time. If it were true that you had to be within a single political relationship in order to trade, the UK would not be leaving the EU. But it has based its entire argument on the fact that that is not the case. So what we have is this double standard. And of course, the only thing that drives that double standard is an extreme dislike of the people of Scotland having a say about their own future. That is anti-democratic. It's also going to damage Scotland far, far more than anything that anybody else does. The reality is the danger to jobs comes from Brexit, from her party, and she should hang her head in shame.
Supplementary question from Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And on that theme, I'd like to ask the Cabinet Secretary what he believes the impact of the UK Government's decision to leave the Brexit transition period in the middle of a global pandemic and economic recession will be on jobs and the wider economy in Scotland.
And the contrast between that question and the previous question is stark, because this question recognises the damage that Brexit will do, and particularly the damage that will be done by Brexit during a global pandemic. It will make an appalling situation even worse. The EU is the largest single market in the world. It's Scotland's largest international trading partner, with exports worth £16.1 billion in 2018. all forms of Brexit, but particularly the ridiculously damaging forms that are the only things left on offer, will harm Scotland's economy and result in lower household incomes in the long run compared to continued EU membership. That is the reality, and it is time the Scottish Conservatives admitted to their own role in that shameful reality.
Question number 4, Joanne Lamont.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what action it can take to ensure that a no-deal Brexit does not impact on the Glasgow economy.
Cabinet Secretary.
The member is right to be concerned about Brexit, not just a no-deal Brexit, but the low-deal Brexit, which is all that remains on offer. The economic and social impacts of EU exit will be felt across all regions of the country, including, of course, in Glasgow. If no deal is reached, we end up trading with the EU on WTO terms. Scottish Government modelling indicates this could lead to a loss of up to 8.5% of GDP in Scotland by 2030, compared to continued EU membership. The Scottish Government continues to direct all the resources available to it to support resilience and mitigating the impacts of leaving the EU. That includes our work with local authorities such as Glasgow City Council and COSLA to identify specific interventions that, as far as possible, can mitigate the effects on our communities and businesses.
Joanne Lamont.
Thank you. At the beginning of this year, before the pandemic hit, Glasgow's budget was already cut by an astonishing £42 million. Indeed, Glasgow has been at the forefront of unjust and brutal cuts over the last decade. With the added threat of a no-deal Brexit and all the financial implications that brings, will the Cabinet Secretary use his authority to ensure the Scottish Government reviews, as a matter of urgency, the funding to Glasgow with a view to protecting the economy of our largest city?
Cabinet Secretary.
Glasgow suffers from what was called historically in elsewhere the Highland problem, and it is this, that the full resources available to the people of Glasgow in terms of their own area is not available to them because it goes elsewhere. What happens in the Highlands has been exactly the same, and what happens in Scotland is exactly the same. So the solution to this, and I agree with the member, the solution to this is to make sure that the resources of Scotland are applied to the problems of Scotland. And if we do that, then we will be able to tackle the long-standing issues that we have, as well as face up to the threats that come, for example, from Brexit, come from the Tory government, come from Scotland not being independent. So the solution is even more obvious, I have to say to Joanne Lamont: support independence and you'll get the outcome you're looking for.
Question number 5, Shona Robison.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what its latest engagement has been with the UK Government regarding the Brexit negotiations.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
Presiding Officer, the Joint Ministerial Committee EU negotiations, at which the 4 governments within the UK are supposed to collectively oversee negotiations with the EU, has not met since the 3rd of September, despite repeated requests by the devolved governments. In particular, although there were attempts, I admit, from both sides to find a date, the committee did not meet in the run-up to the European Council meeting on the 15th and 16th of October, a meeting that was described by the Prime Minister as a crucial milestone. Nor was there any discussion with the Scottish Government about the UK Government's response to the European Council. This is consistent with our experience throughout the Brexit process. At every stage, the key decisions have been taken by the UK Government, taken usually wrongly, with taking no account of the overwhelming vote in Scotland to remain. A meeting of the JMC-EN has been arranged for this Thursday, at which I will once again be pressing Scotland's interests. However, it is clear now that because of the UK Government's position, the only possible outcomes to the negotiations are either a damaging low deal or, even worse, no deal at all.
Shona Robison.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? Even if it agrees a deal with the EU, given the kind of hard Brexit the UK Government is seeking, does the Cabinet Secretary believe that there will be considerable disruption following the end of the transition period in just over 2 months' time?
Michael Russell.
It is inevitable that there will be disruption at the end of the transition period. That is absolutely clear. The UK Government have admitted as much. They are in no sense ready for what is about to take place. And that is a tragic situation. Now, the Scottish Government will work as hard as we possibly can, and will do everything within our power to protect the people of Scotland. But I have said repeatedly, we cannot do everything. This is an appalling mess of the UK Government's making. It has been aided and abetted by Scottish Conservatives here, and it has not been opposed by the Labour Party with the vigour or intention that they should have shown. This is a very serious set of circumstances. The Scottish Government, as I say, will do everything we can in these circumstances, but we know where the blame lies.
Question number 6, Tom Arthur.
To ask the Scottish Government what engagement it has had with the New Zealand Government.
Minister Jenny Gilruth.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government values the strong and enduring relationship we have with New Zealand, built over hundreds of years of migration, cultural exchange and trade. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, our officials have been sharing our respective experiences and learning as we aim to minimise the negative impact and transition through and out of the crisis. Through the Wellbeing Economy Government's initiative, which includes Scotland, New Zealand, Iceland and Wales, we collaborate with the New Zealand Government as we pursue our shared ambition of delivering wellbeing economies which build inclusive, sustainable and resilient societies.
Tom Arthur.
I'm grateful to the Minister for that answer, and she anticipated my supplementary, which is on the Wellbeing Economy Governance Partnership, which describes its aims as to deepen understanding and advance the shared ambition of building a wellbeing economy. Does the Minister agree with me that the ambition of building a wellbeing economy is even more important as we look to the future and rebuilding after COVID? And would she agree more generally that in New Zealand, a small independent country, is an example that Scotland can learn much from?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Mr Arthur is absolutely correct. International solidarity has arguably never been more important. It's imperative that we learn from others as we continue to combat the impacts of COVID-19. The group that Mr Arthur alluded to, and I mentioned in my original answer, is focused on promoting the sharing of expertise and on delivering wellbeing through the economic approach. And in April, a policy lab was held virtually, which was focused on a comparison of the overall responses to the pandemic and how a wellbeing lens could help guide economic recovery. A further 3 of these virtual policy labs have been organised to analyse specific emerging issues across all member governments in light of the pandemic. And, Presiding Officer, Mr Arthur's point on independence for Scotland is, of course, something I wholeheartedly support.
Question number 7, Liam MacArthur.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it supports island-based veterans.
Minister Graham Day.
Presiding Officer, the member will be aware that on the 21st of January I presented to Parliament the Government's response to the extensive consultation undertaken on the strategy for our veterans, at which time I set out clearly the commitments we've made to the veterans community in all parts of Scotland and the actions we're taking between now and 2028 to improve service delivery and mainstream support across 5 cross-cutting factors and 6 key themes. Additionally, the Scottish Government's support for the armed forces and veterans community is reported annually to Parliament, and with the agreement of the Bureau, I would anticipate that 2021 update occurring next month. Amongst the many visits I made last year in developing my understanding of the way we support our veterans on the ground, I travelled to Mr MacArthur's Orkney constituency to meet with the Council and NHS Orkney to learn more about how they are supporting veterans living there, and I must say I was most impressed.
Liam MacArthur.
Can I thank the Minister for that response to the endorsement and indeed for having made the trip up to Orkney. The Scottish Government recently announced an additional introductory discount for veterans across Scotland to participate in the Veterans Railcard scheme. For Isles-based veterans, however, the benefit of this discount is cancelled out by the cost of full-price ferry travel to the Scottish mainland. So will the Minister therefore consider applying the discount more broadly for islanders by extending it to cover ferry travel both to the Scottish mainland as well as on ferry routes from the smaller isles?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, Transport Scotland and the Scottish Government, as you've heard, launched in October the Veterans Rail Card at a discounted price for veterans in Scotland. The Rail Card, which offers a 34% discount in travel, will be available at an overall cost of £15 until March 2021. That introductory price compares to £21 elsewhere in the UK. Now, sitting alongside that, Transport Scotland's National Concessionary Travel Scheme for older and disabled people provides free bus travel throughout Scotland for those living in Scotland aged 60 and over and for eligible disabled people. In addition, the scheme provides 4 ferry journeys to or from the Scottish mainland each year for qualifying island residents. And injured veterans with mobility problems or those in receipt of the War Pension Mobility Supplement are eligible. However, we have no plans to extend the scheme to include all military veterans.
Supplementary question, Maurice Corrie.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Many of the veterans on our islands in Scotland, such as the Outer Hebrides, Orkney and Shetland, come from the Merchant Navy. What actions has the Minister undertaken so far to connect with the Merchant Navy and its veterans themselves to ensure they are supported?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I made a considered effort to acknowledge the role of the Merchant Navy in the veterans community. I think, unfortunately, all too often they are forgotten about, and that is a very wrong situation. I certainly have attended an event commemorating Merchant Navy Day in my own constituency to mark that. But if Mr Corrie, in his role on the CPG, has any further suggestions, I'm more than happy to engage with him on that.
Question number 8, Willie Rennie.
To ask the Scottish Government what events it will permit on Remembrance Sunday.
Minister Graham Day.
Presiding Officer, the remembrance period in November serves a vital purpose in allowing everyone in Scotland a moment to pause, reflect and be thankful to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. But remembrance events this year will require to be scaled back from previous years as a consequence of the need to control the coronavirus pandemic. This year's National Service of Remembrance will be held at the Scottish National War Memorial inside Edinburgh Castle, with representatives from the Government, the Armed Forces and faith organisations laying wreaths. It will have a significantly reduced attendance from previous years, with strict controls in place in line with the current guidance on services and places of worship. Sadly, this is necessary and as a consequence the service will be closed to members of the public. Now, I understand that it will be disappointing for many people that the National Service will not be open to the public, but we would encourage the people of Scotland to participate in remembrance in whatever way they can do so safely. And we've been working closely with Legion Scotland and Poppy Scotland, in addition to the local authorities, to ensure that remembrance events taking place can do so safely and in line with Scottish Government guidance.
Willie Rennie.
Even in the middle of a global pandemic, we must not forget the sacrifices made in wars past to protect our freedoms today. I will be attending 2 safe events in North East Fife, one in St Andrews, but also one in Cooper, which will be videoed with my colleague Wendy Chamberlain MP. This will be recorded for viewing later on social media and wider opportunities as well. I'm keen to encourage people across the country to show imagination and find ways of marking the day. What advice can he give to those organisations? Where can they go to get that support? And how can they make sure that we remember those who have sacrificed their lives for us?
Minister. Presiding Officer, if you allow me just a little bit more time to answer this, because it's a terribly important question and I recognise a lot of interest in this out there. The Scottish Government has, following the discussions with Legion Scotland and Poppy Scotland, advised all local authorities that local remembrance events can proceed as long as they adhere to the relevant guidance for outdoor events or places of worship in their area. All gatherings involving more than 6 people from 2 different households will need to be organised as an event in line with this guidance and will require the approval of the relevant local authority. As part of this, organisers will be required to limit the number of people attending, maintain social distancing at all times and complete out a risk assessment to limit the risk of transmission of the virus. So to help ensure consistency of approach, the current guidance for these categories of events has been issued to all local authorities and key stakeholders, along with the associated checklist that details the necessary steps that must be taken for events to proceed. Now, like Mr Rennie, I'm attending an event in my own constituency in Carnoustie, and I am very much aware of the terrific effort that's being made by the organisers to ensure that this can be conducted safely. But I think the other point here, Presiding Officer, is that that's the position regarding direct participation. But we also have the issue of non-participatory attendance, and members across the chamber will be aware of events in their own constituencies which normally attract the wider public looking to pay their respects in quite large numbers. The message I have for that wider public is please don't go there this year. Now, to pick up Willie Rennie's point about virtual coverage, Legion Scotland and Poppy Scotland, for example, will be broadcasting the National Service of Remembrance from the Scottish War Memorial so that everyone can participate virtually from the safety of their own home. And I would encourage members of the public to tune into that service and pay their respects in that way, in the hope that by next year we can return to our normal way of paying tribute on Remembrance Sunday.
Thank you very much. We now move to the next portfolio, which is portfolio questions on economy, fair work and culture. And I call for question number 1, Monica Lennon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what further support it will make available to businesses in Central Scotland that continue to be affected by COVID-19 restrictions.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The First Minister announced on the 21st of October an extension to the restrictions imposed on the 9th of October and further additional financial support for the businesses affected by the restrictions. More than £40 million has been earmarked for the COVID restrictions fund for this current period, including grant support for businesses that have had to close due to restrictions and hardship grants to businesses that are not required to close but whose businesses are impacted, such as pubs and restaurants out with the Central Belt and some businesses in the hospitality supply chain. There is also a £9 million scheme to contribute to support for furloughed employees and an £11 million contingency fund to help other businesses that need support but are not eligible for either the new grant or employment support schemes. And yesterday we announced that the first phase of awards through the contingency fund will provide one-off support to nightclubs and soft play centres which have been closed since March, and details of the support available is on the Scottish Government website. Future business support arrangements are set out in Scotland's strategic framework.
Monica Lynn.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. I've been contacted by businesses in Lanarkshire that are struggling after 7 weeks of restrictions, including taxi firms who don't qualify for any support. For example, Wellman Cars, based in Hamilton, are fighting to survive and protect jobs. With further restrictions expected, will the Scottish Government give urgent support to taxi companies and others who are falling through the cracks? And given that ministers are advising against the use of public transport just now, what more can the Scottish Government do to help taxi firms get key workers to their work safely?
Cabinet Secretary.
So as part of the initial COVID response, we worked with taxi companies in particular to help provide additional income with it for them, and there was a scheme particularly for contracted support to get patients to the health support that they were needing. We also, as part of the Aberdeen response, provided a discretionary fund for the council there. Some of that could be used for taxis. They were identified as a particular sector whose demand might be limited by closures elsewhere, although they themselves were still able to operate. And again, the announcement I just described as part of this current period, it has an element of discretion and a discretionary fund that allows, as part of that contingency, for local authorities to identify areas like taxis. So I would encourage her to talk to our local council to see if they could use their allocation for that to support the businesses, the important businesses that she's described in her constituency.
Supplementary question from Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Nightclubs can currently apply for support grants, but only if they have not opened at all since March, for example, changing their licence to open as a pub. That is the situation facing Brian Fulton of Holdfast Entertainment, who has spent £12,000 trying to adapt his premises and keep going, only to reclose after 1 week and then find out, as a result of this, he can't now receive support. Does the Cabinet Secretary recognise how unfair it is to penalise those who are doing everything they can to save jobs? And will she allow these nightclubs who are simply trying to survive to apply for support?
Cabinet Secretary.
I do recognise that issue, and it is being addressed as we speak. If I want to address nightclubs in particular, those that have curated music have been able to apply to the Culture and Venues Fund that's being administered by Creative Scotland, but those that don't provide curated music are now being provided with a nightclubs fund, and it's important that we support them. But Maurice Golden raises an important point. You know, because of the challenges businesses are facing, many are adapting the business, and many will have to do that for some time to come, because either because of collapse in demand in the market, or perhaps because of the level that they're in, that they are no longer able to, or continue to not be able to open for their regular business. So adaptation of businesses is going to be really important. The point he raises is a specific one. The reason why so many businesses in the last few weeks have changed, of course, is the collapse of the furlough scheme as was, and many wanted to anticipate that and so therefore change their business. What we don't want to do is penalise people for adapting their businesses, while we're taking that point very seriously. As I said, that is being addressed as we speak, and an announcement will be made shortly for businesses such as the one that he has just mentioned.
Supplementary question from Claire Baker.
Thank you, President Officer. I declare an interest as my cousin owns a recording and rehearsal studio. The COVID-19 Business Hardship Fund is restricted to hospitality businesses and gyms, but they are not the only businesses who are affected. Will the Government urgently review the criteria for the fund to include other businesses, often in the commercial cultural sector, who are unable to operate under the current restrictions, particularly the disallowing of multiple households meeting indoors? Or will she give a commitment that they'll have access to the contingency fund?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I talked about the scheme that we currently have just now, which has the contingency fund, but also has the two elements. One, if businesses are closed, and secondly, if they are not closed or they're not required to close, but their revenues are impacted. As we go forward into the next scheme that supports the strategic framework, that element is still there, that those businesses whose demand has collapsed or has been reduced, but are not themselves required to close, can apply for that lower level of funding support. So again, that's something that we'll keep a regular eye and development of. Obviously, these schemes are developed quickly. There's always room for adaptation and change. But I, like her, are very keen to ensure that the cultural music sector in particular continues to be supported, and that's why, as part of our £107 million consequentials, as well as additional Scottish Government support, we're putting so much focus on the cultural sector.
And supplementary question from Willie Coffey.
Thank you, President Officer. Last week, the Chancellor made an open-ended commitment to support business in England for as long as is necessary. He can do that because he can borrow to pay for it, whilst the Scottish Government can't. Does this Cabinet Secretary agree with me that the UK Government must also provide the same funding guarantee to Scottish businesses? And if it won't, should provide the Scottish Government with the necessary financial powers to protect the future of Scottish jobs and business?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, yes, obviously, yes, I do, because the real concern we have is that this will be demand-led. And we know that business grants for those affected by the Tier 2 restrictions in England, that those decisions have not generated further consequential funding at this stage. So we definitely and urgently need clarity on funding. My colleague, Ms Forbes, wrote to the Chancellor on the 20th of October about this issue. That £700 million that was provided to Scotland as part of our consequentials is meant to last for 6 months to the end of the financial year. It's meant to cover public health issues, transport issues, and a whole host of other public service areas. So I think it's unfair for businesses not to have the same guarantee of funding should they move between different levels, should they be required to close, should they be impacted, even if they remain open. But they should not be restricted in being able to access funds. We don't want that limited amount that we have to run out before the end of that financial year period. And that is why we urgently need clarity to make sure that Scotland is treated as fairly as England and other parts of the United Kingdom in this regard.
Question number 2, Colin Beattie.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it's had with the UK Government regarding the timeline for the draft consultation on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund.
Minister Ivan McKee.
Scotland's EU Structural Fund programmes close in 2 months, yet the UK Government has failed to provide appropriate details about their proposed replacement. Preliminary conversations took place in Scotland in late 2018, but despite my best efforts, there have been no substantial engagement since. A recently scheduled meeting with the UK Minister for Communities and Local Government was cancelled without explanation and no alternative date provided. And clearly none of this is acceptable, but I can assure Mr Beattie and other members that we will keep trying to get meaningful engagement on this matter with the UK Government.
Colin Beattie.
I thank the Minister for his response. Professor David Bell wrote a media article last week and concluded that a future UK Shared Prosperity Fund needs to be devolved. Whitehall doesn't know best when it comes to understanding the needs of communities and businesses across Scotland. Does the Minister share this view, and should we be concerned that Westminster is going to grab these powers and funds from Scotland?
Minister.
I'm increasingly concerned that Westminster is seeking to grab these powers and funds from Scotland. When speaking with the Finance and Constitution Committee last month, Michael Gove was unable to give his word that Westminster will not pass legislation in respect of devolved areas without the Scottish Parliament's consent. This was endorsed in an interview by Paul Scully MP, who stated that the Shared Prosperity Fund will be controlled directly by Westminster, bypassing the Scottish Government. I've written to Mr Scully demanding confirmation and clarity on these plans, but to date have received no response. Clearly there is strong support for this funding and these powers staying in Scotland, and I will keep fighting to achieve that.
Question number 3, Finlay Carson.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the Scottish Growth Scheme.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The aim of the Scottish Growth Scheme has always been to unlock investment, public, private sector and European, to support businesses, especially young technology-based, that would not readily access the capital that they need from traditional sources like banks. It is demand-led, and despite the impact of the current COVID pandemic, as at the 30th of September 2020, it has unlocked investment of some £273 million in debt and equity for 481 companies.
Finlay Carson.
I thank the Minister for that answer, but as you'll be well aware, £500 million was promised when the scheme was launched. So given the current climate, can I ask what more will be done to ensure that as many businesses as possible across the country can have access to that money that was promised to them 3 years ago?
Cabinet Secretary.
So as the Conservatives well know, this is a scheme, not a fund. It's not £500 million of public resources that have to be allocated or distributed. It is demand-led, as I said. As he appreciates, there are challenges just now, which is why we've made sure in the marketing of this, the promotion of this, we've also made sure that we're targeting those companies that are in need, and in particular in relation to appointing fund managers that can identify micro and smaller companies that could particularly benefit as they evolve and develop in terms of reaction and opportunities in these difficult times. So we will continue to help and support that. But obviously, one aspect of the funding stream, whether it's European investment funds or indeed ERDF funds, will be cut off as a result of the United Kingdom leaving the European Union.
Question number 4, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it can take in relation to hospitality and other businesses who may be treating their staff unfairly during the lockdown restrictions.
Minister Jamie Hepburn.
In the absence of powers over employment law, we are using all levers available to us to embed fair work practices in workplaces across Scotland, putting it at the heart of our economic recovery. That's why on the 19th of July, we issued a refreshed joint statement with the STUC, COSLA, SCVO and business organisations outlining the shared commitment to fair work practices in Scotland. While we're very conscious of the challenges facing employers and businesses at this time, adopting fair work practices is now more important than ever.
Rona Mackay.
Thank the Minister for that answer. Many workers in the hospitality trade have been treated very unfairly during this pandemic. Some high-profile venues have disregarded their rights, often by denying them furlough and eroding their terms and conditions. Does the Minister agree that there must be an increased focus now and post-COVID on the treatment of workers, particularly in the hospitality trade?
Jamie Hepburn.
Yes, I do agree with that premise. I am acutely aware of the need for us to embed fair work practice in the hospitality sector and indeed across our economy as a whole. Although I don't have the specifics that Rona Mackay alludes to and refers to, if she wanted to provide them for me, I'd be happy to receive them. If it is the case that is happening, then it's very concerning and we must collectively commit to addressing these issues. And indeed, the Scottish Tourism Recovery Task Force that Ferguson Ewing and I jointly recently published a series of recommendations in relation to this particular area, and we'll be taking that work forward in due course.
Supplementary question, Ruth Maguire.
Presiding Officer. Appreciating the limitations around employment law, it is however vital that steps continue to be taken to deal with unfair working practices and unscrupulous employers. Concerns have been raised throughout the pandemic about unfair fire and rehire policies. Does the Minister share my revulsion at this practice and agree that steps should be taken to stop it?
Minister Jamie Hepburn.
Well, this is a practice I know that has been reported over the last period as a concern. It's something I'll be able to discuss with the STUC and their affiliates. I do have concerns about this type of practice not being wholly compatible with our aims around fair work. And whilst Ms Maguire correctly makes the point that employment law is reserved, I've recently written to Gavin Newlands MP setting out the Scottish Government's broad support for his proposed bill that looks to tackle this matter. Ms Maguire and other members will look with interest to see where Mr Newlands' bill ends up going.
Thank you. Question number 5, Jamie Halcrow-Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government what analysis it has carried out on the impact of COVID-19 on businesses across the Highlands and Islands.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
We are liaising with local authorities and enterprise agencies to better understand the impact of COVID-19 and the wider actions required to enable recovery in their local communities and wider regions. A recent report published by Highlands and Islands Enterprise found the impact of COVID-19 on the regional economy will be significant, and the report emphasised the importance of tourism and visitor spend in the local economy. I will continue to examine the regional impacts to ensure that the specific needs of Scotland's regions are supported.
Jamie Halcrow-Johnson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that there are many parts of the region where even the loss of one business or a small number of jobs can have a disproportionate impact on the local economy and community. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, building on the work that she's already said Highlands and Islands Enterprise is doing, but also the role of business gateways, how they're being utilised in identifying areas where there are businesses or jobs at risk, and how they're being tasked and resourced to target interventions and support accordingly.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, clearly Business Gateway can support be the first point of contact for many businesses. Obviously, the online support that is there across Scotland is helpful for all businesses. But he raises a very important point about the resilience of particular communities. And in the Convention of the Highlands and Islands discussions, which took place on Monday, I was part of that. That was one of the concerns of the leader of the Highland Council in relation to the resilience through the winter period. So we're very acutely aware of that. That was a consideration of the discussions at the Convention of the Highlands and Islands that took place on Monday. And part of that is to identify what can be done in different areas. But it was very clear that the resilience and the opportunities within different communities may be different from one part of the Highlands and Islands to the other. And so therefore it has to be particularly responsive to the needs of individuals. And he also talks about the impact that only one or two businesses can make. And we're very alert to that. And thank you for drawing that to everyone's attention during this period of questions.
Supplementary question, Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And further to that, the Cabinet Secretary is aware that businesses in the Highlands and Islands have faced restrictions, but also had to work hard to serve those that were encouraged to take staycations this year. I've been asked by businesses whether in future it's worth looking at, rather than locking them down with the whole of Scotland or indeed a wider area, to allow them to stay open and serve their local communities. And that way they provide a service to their local community as well as save jobs in remote rural communities.
Cabinet Secretary.
That's a very important point, and I think the issue around going to a more localised local authority level for restrictions brings with it some consequences, some intended, some unintended, and obviously the travel issue is potentially one of them, and obviously the strategic framework sets out what's expected there. But I absolutely agree that the ability to serve your local community will be important to the resilience of communities going forward, and the discussions that have been taking place with my colleague Fergus Ewing and others with the hospitality and tourism sector has been addressing some of these issues, and obviously things may develop. We'll see what the final document looks like and what it says, but I think also the point she's making about how we can continue to provide opportunities, particularly in relation to serving local communities, depending on the size of that. Obviously, it can be variable, and Highlands is an enormous area, but I do think that's something that can be part of those continuing considerations.
Supplementary question, Willie Rennie.
I'm concerned that the current grant scheme is no longer fit for purpose. Changes yesterday will reduce the number of businesses that are compelled to close, particularly around about hospitality, even though in reality those businesses will remain closed because it won't be worth opening because the restrictions that are still in place are so tight. That could result in a reduction of a third of the grant that would be available to them. Will the Minister look again at the grant scheme and the balance of support between hardship and compulsion to close to make sure we get it right so we can get the support to the businesses that need it?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the issues about access to different types of support depending on what your position is something we're very open to continue to discuss and look at. I think the point he's raising is that if there are businesses that can close and are required to close, they have the opportunity to benefit from the 3,000 grant, but also the job support scheme. But then that also is a rate of 60%. If those businesses that are impacted can access the job support scheme, that means that they can operate for and they can be financed and supported for employees that are only working for 1 day a week. That is at a different level. But I do hear what you said, saying it has been a point that's been raised to us in the discussions we've had. We've had to develop schemes very rapidly. We announced our funding for this current closure on the very same day as we heard the latest job support scheme changes. So it is a movable feast, as you can see, but businesses want to know what they can access, and we have to incentivise being able to open and trade where possible, rather than necessarily people seeing that the closure is a better option. But he's saying that actually by allowing in the levels, more businesses to stay open, that might then penalise them in terms of the grant. So I hear what he's saying, and we'll reflect on that.
Question number 7, Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what communications it has had with the UK Government regarding extending the furlough scheme.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The Scottish Government has made repeated representations to the UK Government about extending the furlough scheme, including in correspondence with UK ministers. We've consistently raised concerns about the importance of extending support and the many people who continue to fall through the gaps in the UK provision. We welcome the recent changes to the job support scheme. Under the new scheme, where the business is open, an employee will get a minimum of 73% of their normal wages compared to 80% under the original furlough scheme. Similarly, the self-employed are provided with only 40% of a 3-month average income, which is completely inadequate and fails to protect otherwise viable businesses and livelihoods during this unprecedented time. We appreciate the recent changes announced by the Chancellor. They go some way towards addressing the shortfall. However, the Scottish Government believes that this support does not go far enough, or indeed for a long enough period of time, to effectively mitigate the ongoing impact on workers and on the economy.
Christine Graham.
Further to the reference to the job support scheme, I have my doubts whether we'll do what it says in the tin. Has the Scottish Government an estimate of the resultant job losses, which are already happening in Scotland as furlough petered out and this new one, rather more inadequate, is being introduced? Because it's already happening in my constituency of Midlothian, South Tweeddale and Lauderdale.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, constituency MSPs will clearly be aware of what's happening in their own area. The Scottish Government is as yet unable to provide an estimate of the number of job losses in Scotland, given that the job support scheme was only updated at the end of last week, and it has taken 3 announcements in the space of a month on the job support scheme, even to get to this point. It's causing great worry and anxiety to businesses. The Chancellor has been too slow, and we are now 3 days away from the end of the furlough scheme. And many businesses, as Christine Graham has pointed out, are already facing redundancies, and some have completed the redundancy processes by now. So the Chancellor also needs to do more to set out what support he will provide to the 160,000 workers in Scotland who are still on full-time furlough.
And question number 8, Maurice Corrie.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to support businesses in adapting to new ways of working as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Minister Jamie Hepburn.
We have and continue to work in collaboration with industry, trade unions, regulators, local authorities and others, including quality organisations, to publish and refine sectoral guidance to support continued safe recovery of our economy. To date, we have provided an unprecedented package of support to businesses. As we look ahead to a new levels approach, we will continue to work collaboratively to understand and ensure as far as we can what the resources available to us support for businesses required to close or otherwise affected by protective measures.
Maurice Corrie.
Deputy Presiding Officer, I shall thank the Minister for a fairly difficult to hear response, but I think I picked up the main theme of it. But I thank the Minister for that answer, as far as I could hear, and I would remind him that the Government's own Digital Growth Fund hasn't paid out anything like the £36 million promised by the SNP in 2017. So can the Minister now just confirm to us here today in the Chamber that the Digital Growth Fund is still open, and if so, how much longer?
Briefly, please, Minister.
The Digital Growth Fund, Presiding Officer, isn't directly in my purview, so what I would commit to do is take that away and come back directly to Mr Corrie with a comprehensive update. Hopefully he has heard that.
Thank you very much, and that's appreciated. We will move on in a moment. That concludes portfolio questions. We will move on in a moment to the next item of business.